folks, yeah, I wish I could say, yeah, we've got lots of callers who want to talk to us and who are ready to go, but there's just one caller here right now who wants to talk to us. It's an old favorite, a household name. It's Biblically, who's calling in from, I don't know where Biblically's from. Biblically doesn't want to tell us where he's from. That's totally fine. Biblically's calling in
from Earth.
He's from Earth.
Somewhere on Earth.
I think we could say, I think we can say that much.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But biblically, you're alive again on Truth Wanted. What's going on tonight?
Biblically, I'm calling from God. So God is literally next to me as I'm speaking with you. So what I want to talk about is Genesis 1:1. That in the beginning,
maybe you should ask God what a good
earth.
argument for us would be, because if you got him standing right next to you, you can win this debate.
That's true. Can we talk to him if he's there?
Well, that's what I was going to talk about, is Genesis 1:1.
Well, that's in a book, though. You have God right next to you.
That's not, yeah, you said that's what we're going to talk about, but that's not what we were talking about. We were talking about how you said God is literally next to you. What does that mean?
Well, Genesis 1:1 comports with sacred theology. So that's both the Bible and the knowledge of God at the same time.
But that's not what I asked, though. I want to know, what does it mean when you say God is literally next to you?
That God interacts with me. Our God of the Bible interacts with me throughout the day. So he gives me...
way?
Yeah, what does that look like?
Well, he responds to my queries. He gives me warm, tingly feelings inside. He moves stars for me outside, objects in my room. Hence my
you actually
username.
See objects getting picked up by God. Like he could pick up like a pencil near you and move it around your room. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, stuff like that. So my username, so this should give you an understanding on the relationship I have with our God, is that my username is biblically God's perfect innamorato. So in other words, God's perfect male lover. So I have a YouTube channel with that username, biblically God's perfect innamorato. So I've chosen to live a perfect life in accordance to our Heavenly Father of the Bible. In return, I'll be rewarded in accordance to his ultimacy in his new kingdom of everlasting paradise. You too can have this life if you choose to live perfect. This comports with Matthew. Be perfect like our Heavenly Father is.
I don't think I can live perfectly, and I don't know if I'd want to, but taking all that aside, I want to talk about what you just said, which was you think that there are things that happen in a room that you can see and that are also moving, and that helps contribute to your belief in God. Have you ever decided to record any of those events?
Biblically, you already know God exists, so I don't need to record.
I don't.
No, that's not true at all.
And I've said it every time you've told me that. I don't know that he exists. I do know that other things exist, and I do know that if they moved without any force of nature or human interaction, that
or
would
like
be
checking to see if the
about.
window's open or something.
Yeah, like.
But like dictionarily, I don't believe in a God. You need to come up with actual things to back it up. So like you should we have I'm a mod on the Facebook fan group. If you can take video of God moving things around, I will be happy to share that with all the other hosts on here.
Biblically, only our God meets the requirements to be eternal because he is ultimate, and the universe was created because matter is three-dimensional, so it's contingent on parts. So in other words, it's irreducibly complex.
You kind of ignored everything I said. I asked if you'd be willing to share video in the Facebook fan group, which I'm an admin on, and I will happily share it with them. Address that before you go on to your next claim, please.
Again, I've already stated that everyone knows God exists.
You've
I
thrown
don't
out,
need-
you've asserted that everybody knows there's
Right.
God, but dictionarily, I don't believe in a God, so that doesn't match up with reality.
And also, it is like within the parameters of the Bible. In other words, biblically, there have been points where people have said, oh, you want to know that God exists? Well, here's a thing that only my God can do. Right? Like that has happened. There are stories of the apostles in the New Testament that have done that. And there are also stories in the Old Testament where that has happened. And I know that because you say biblically so much, you know that these stories exist, right? Like you know that there are signs and wonders that have been demonstrated to be by God according to the stories and have been used to convince people, right?
The adverb biblically has two meanings. And so it means all of reality in the Bible. So you could Google this if you want. So for me to start my sentences with the adverb biblically is a legitimate form of communication because you know I'm speaking objective truth and not expressing my opinion.
I know you're claiming that. I don't agree that you are.
Well,
How
you
are you
need to
discerning
listen.
that it's
like,
objective? How are you discerning that it's objective? Because I'm hearing a lot of assertions, and a lot of the assertions that you've said have been factually wrong. So
Yes.
I know
Also-
inside my head, I don't believe in a God. So your objective facts right there are wrong. So maybe provide evidence instead of coming in with more and more assertions. That's why
Yes.
every single host is coming at you, because you keep asserting the same things over and over again. You're not having a back and forth conversation. When we're
Mhm.
asking you questions, listen to what we're asking instead of moving on to your next point.
Right. And my exact point for this particular topic was there are people in the Bible who have said, yeah, let me show you what God can do. Right? Like you agree. Do you agree or disagree with that? I want to know.
Well, I'll address the evidence point first, and then the Bible is that the evidence is the proper noun God. So for you to use the proper noun God, you are appealing to the revelation of God. So in other words, you're
How about
appealing
you
to the
stop
pure...
this and go back to Dan's question, because that's way the hell off topic. And you brought this up every single show. It hasn't changed any minds. So move on to answering Dan's question instead of going to this old assertion.
Addressing your point first, and then I'll address Dan's concern. There's two of you and one of me. So I need to address one of you at a time. So the evidence is the proper
we already
noun
said
God.
you could skip this because
So-
this wasn't evidence. So we can skip.
Yeah.
You can skip answering me. Go to Dan's question.
We disagree with the assertion that using a proper noun is evidence. And I
Yeah.
know that we've had that conversation.
I can refer to Spider-Man by his name, Peter Parker. That doesn't mean that Peter Parker exists. So that's bad evidence. It's not. I wouldn't even call it evidence. So move on to the next claim, because this first one was bad.
But the actor for Spider-Man exists. So you're playing word games. So for an eternal
I'm playing word games.
material, again, you've asked for the evidence. So at minimum, a sentence is 30 to 40 words. So you need to give me at least more than 20 words to respond to your response.
Well, if you say something wrong within the first 5 words, we don't have to listen to that, and you can move on to answering a proper question. Because if you're already stating bad logic, I don't need to listen to whatever 50 words are coming after that.
Addressing both of you at the same time. So I'm addressing your points first.
Well, I told you to skip my point and go on to Dan's.
Yeah, let's move on.
Well, the Bible, again, as I've stated earlier, is that divine revelation covers both the Bible and the knowledge of God, because in Genesis 1:1, it states, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So we know the universe was created because of the knowledge of God.
Can I give a counterpoint? What about the people who existed before the Bible was written, or who are even actors within the Bible stories? How did they know?
Getting to is that even before reading the Bible, we know that a higher power exists through the revelation of God.
let's talk about this. So if that was true, you don't even have to assert the Bible, right? Like, I would just go to that point first, because that seems to be, if that's true for all human beings, then why would we even need to have the Bible in the first place?
That's a good point.
The Bible is for preaching, teaching, and instruction in righteousness. This comports with 1 Timothy. So to address your earlier points is that even before reading the Bible, we know that a higher power exists, and it just so happens to be that this higher power comports with the proper noun God. So for an eternal, immaterial, infinite in size, all-powerful, all-knowing proper noun to be understood requires revelation from our God of the Bible. So to summarize all of that, for an ultimate proper noun to be understood amid this discussion requires active general revelation from our God of the Bible. So that's the evidence, and this so happens to comport with Genesis 1:1, that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. So we know before using the scientific method that the universe was created because matter is irreducibly complex. So in other words, it's three-dimensional with height, depth, and width. Therefore, matter is...
We let you get in the 40 words now, so you could apparently that was one sentence, that was a lot of assertions.
Let me be allowed to make my response, if I may. So, I have a view of the world, biblically, that puts Christianity and Judaism in its origins at about more or less 3,000 years ago, give or take, maybe extra, maybe 3,500, maybe more so. And it also depends on what you count as the origins, because if you're talking about the original sources that the Jewish people use for writings, it's actually outside of the Jewish faith, because there's inspiration from other stories. You get where I'm putting it. But in other words, human history in and of itself has existed for at least 100,000 years, if not more so. And that's just talking about like what we know today as humans, Homo sapiens, right? Going back even farther, we can go into the millions and millions of years for other people and like other beings, other kinds of, apes. So you have to convince me that basically all of that information isn't true, because out of all of human history, for most of it, they did not cite God at all for any of their beliefs. In the grand scheme of human history, this is a very recent invention, and also not an exclusive one, because there are other people of other faiths and of other various beliefs and traditions who have also talked about supreme powers and deities that are mutually exclusive in the claims of that of the Christian God. So in order for you to convince me biblically that your worldview is true, you have to contest with these facts, the facts that human beings have been around for a really long time. There are mutually exclusive claims that are older than that we have found of Christianity. And basically those two. I mean, because I cannot find a way to reconcile my worldview otherwise. I really can't.
You're possibly presupposing millions/billions of years. So that's not an argument to say that.
I think I've come to that conclusion based on the available evidence. I think that's reasonable to say, because I definitely wasn't born with the belief that the earth was millions of years old, right? That was definitely taught to me. It was definitely studied by other people, and people have come to that conclusions through various methodologies. Yeah. I don't know the methodologies of which you speak of that we determine, oh, well, God is real because we feel it in our hearts. That doesn't seem like a very verifiable methodology to me. It just kind of feels
like... I
like
do most of my thinking with my brain and not my heart. So that's definitely wrong.
So again, I'm appealing to empirical evidence. So the first sentence of the Bible states, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So we know that a higher power exists, and that
Because
the
a book
universe was
says it.
A book
created.
saying something is not empirical evidence.
That's not verifiable. Anybody can write anything down in a book, and it doesn't
Right.
become evidence unless you're able to back it up with science and investigation.
Right.
And you're not coming up with science and investigation. You're stacking claims on top of claims on top of claims. And you went on for way more than 40 words for your sentences, and you didn't come up with anything that could actually be considered verifiable evidence.
Yeah. Well, and more to that point, right? When we talk about empirical evidence, scientists who really do this work, they actually have to do the work outside of their writings, and then they record their observations. And so that becomes what we call data and what we can work with through there. But that other work has to happen first. Somebody writing down a couple of thousands of years ago, God did this. There's no outside work that has to be involved to do that. In other words, we can't verify it. We can't reproduce it, right? Like empiricism and the scientific method relies on reproducibility. So in that sense, like strictly speaking, it is not empirical evidence.
I'm not trying to be condescending here, but I would appreciate it if you take notes. As I stated earlier, is that I'm appealing to divine revelation. So that's both the
Which
Bible
is not empirical evidence.
Again, I've stated this earlier, is that matter, so physical material, is irreducibly complex. So it's made up of parts contingent on our God of the Bible who created...
Have you done any research outside of the Bible on any of this stuff? Because this doesn't sound like you're coming up with factual evidence. It sounds like you're just repeating what you heard in the Bible or heard from preachers. I don't need to take notes on stuff until you start giving me a way of verifying anything that you're saying. Divine revelation means zero to me. I've never been religious, so it's like a nonsense term for me.
The observation, even if it was a legitimate observation that matter is irreducibly complex, which I disagree with. Yes. Let's say that even if that inference was valid, that's not science. Just saying that. You have to have something that backs that up. What you're using to back that up is the Bible says that. And,
so you should look for ways to test what's in the Bible instead of just taking its word for it.
It's not, and I don't know that scientists would agree with you on that observation. More importantly, that matter is irreducibly complex, because we do have subatomic particles, and we've seemed to go deeper and deeper into what we find to be base reality. So, like, there may be a bottom to it, there may not be. The point is, like, we have to deal with what we can observe, and that by itself, this should not give you the confidence that a God exists, let alone the God of the Christian Bible, especially because the Bible does not talk about matter. It simply does not. That is, I think, a modern interpolation, if anything.
Physical matter is irreducibly complex because it has height, depth, and width. Therefore, it's contingent on parts. So the universe cannot have always existed. Therefore, our God of the Bible created the universe because God is singular by default. So he's not made up of parts.
How do you know that? Have you done anything to investigate God's nature? Because that seems like another assertion.
Yeah. Observations about matter doesn't tell me anything about God. It really doesn't.
I need more time to respond.
I think after multiple calls to us, after talking to us for many times, I think you've gotten plenty of times to respond. And we're at the end of the show here now. And I'm personally not interested in having this conversation any further. So maybe another time, another guest host can have that conversation with you.
Maybe get off the script too, because you'll find that conversations are more conducive when it sounds like the other person's listening instead of waiting for their turn to talk. And I've heard the script a billion times from you on various call-in shows, and it doesn't sound convincing. So listen to what the hosts are saying. I probably won't be here, but there'll be other hosts that'll be happy to hear you engage with them with what they're saying.
Well, on top of that, I also, again, just completely disagree with the claim that, we don't let you talk, we interrupt you. Like, look, maybe a couple times in this conversation, Josh has been like ready to go, but that's only because he listens to all the shows and he knows and he's heard you and he's not convinced and I'm not convinced. I think we've made our counter arguments. I think we've made our counterpoints to consider. I hope you can consider them. Observations and facts about the known world, including that human beings are evolved and that the earth is billions of years old, are not presuppositions. They're based on, again, empirical evidence, something which you claim to have, which we again disagree with the fact that you do. Divine revelation is not empirical evidence. What the Bible says is not empirical evidence. It doesn't fall under that. And if we want to be true skeptics about the world, if we really want to figure out what is true about our reality, I don't think we can appeal to emotions of the heart. And I also find it very interesting that for somebody who says that, hey, I'm going to cite empirical evidence for my argument, we challenge you with that claim and also say, hey, you say that there's stuff moving in your room. Can you record that? You don't want to present that. Why not? That's also empirical evidence. What is the difference between that and the argument that you're claiming to make? Because if you're saying we can't do this, but we can also do this, it just doesn't make any sense. Why isn't that valid? If we can make empirical arguments for God, that should be considered within the milieu of, your work. Otherwise, you're just saying stuff and we don't know how to verify that. And anybody can call in and say, yeah, I saw stuff move in my room. Okay. Until we can look at it, I don't know what to say about it, because in my world, stuff doesn't randomly move around in my room. And I don't believe I don't have a higher power in my heart anymore. I think I felt emotions in church because I was stimulated to do that. But outside of that, I don't think that that's something we can rely on to, base our worldviews on. But hey, I've been talking a lot here and we're at the end of tonight's program. So I want to give a special thanks again to Josh Entner for being on tonight's show. Josh, where can people find you at?
You can find me on the Bloody Good Film podcast.